Hello and welcome to another video. I am Stephanie Kilgast and I have been a professional artist for over a decade, 16 years now, so it's been a while. And in today's video I'm going to share with you one of my recent paintings, drawings, illustration. I never really know how to describe those. A lot of people would use the word illustration for that, but for me illustration is really about illustrating a book, and I know that's the old kind of sense or meaning to that word, but it's stuck in my head that illustration is for a book, even though I know it's used in a more larger scale nowadays and it has a lot to do with style and technique and medium. But yeah, it's painting. I started as a drawing about krill specifically. And I made this specific painting for the 4-Planet Ocean challenge. I've talked about it before, and it's something we do on Instagram with other artists and illustrators. And yeah, we do this I've been doing it every year for 3 years now or 4 years now. I don't exactly recall when I started. It's hosted by 2 artists. The one that for me is the more active, if that makes sense, or the president, so to speak, of that group. Sounds very posh and fancy, is Emma Lopez, and she's an incredible artist. I really like her work. I actually own one of her pieces. I got it, or I snatched it during an auction. It wasn't going up that much, and I was like, this is such a steal for that price. And yeah, I bought it and it's in my kitchen. I really like it. You have to check out her work. It's not completely dissimilar to mine. It's very colorful. It's a lot about nature and the ocean, but yeah, nature in general. And yeah, I really like her way of working. It's colorful realism, to make it short, and nature. So yeah, I really love her work, and she's been hosting with another artist, Shelly Amo, I think. I'm going to link down below their Instagrams because I think they're doing great work about ocean awareness and conservation, and I really enjoy working with them every year. And so every year what we do, it is an art challenge. We host it on Instagram. So we usually are a few, maybe 10, around 10 or so artists and illustrators, sometimes more, sometimes less. And we have 5 prompts. So every year is a bit different. I remember one year it was 1 prompt per week, then it was more, and this year it was definitely shorter. It was almost 2 prompts per week. We decide which prompts to work on, and we also work with a specific charity. So this year, let me check, because of course I did forget, but this year the charity we worked with was Ocean Culture Life. It changes every year, and for the painting you're seeing right now, the prompt was stories of the frozen seas. So basically this year we had stories everywhere because it was really about storytelling. And so I decided to work on krill specifically, mostly because I've seen sea shepherds talk about krill and krill fishing, which is quite devastating. And so I kind of wanted to work on that topic, but in a not as brutal way, if that makes sense. I think as an artist, I tend to approach art or artivism in general with a more lighter, more hopeful, more cheerful approach than to be just very factual and documentary and sometimes a bit, hopeless. I do want my work to instill more hope than anything else. Basically, what I want with my work is for you guys, the public, to rediscover the beauty of the planet Earth. When you realize how beautiful something is, you are more inclined to fight for it and to maybe change your lifestyle, but also ultimately try to change society as a whole to make it more sustainable, more just. And so yeah, that's kind of the gist of my work. For the krill, what I wanted to do is to just showcase krill in surrealistic sci-fi landscape art work. So since I've been working on those sci-fi landscape for a while, and I'm still into that in the painting at least. So I took a picture of very, very high-rise buildings in Busan, in Haeundae to be more specific, and one of those high-rise buildings is 100 floors or something like that high, so insane. Especially from a European point of view, but yeah, completely insane, and so close to the water as well. So I don't think they're too concerned about water rising, ocean waters rising. It is factual, it is happening, but they don't seem to be too concerned about that. I don't know. In any case, I took that picture and it was a really impressive picture, and I just made it a bit more impressive. And what I wanted to have was those two whales, the blue whales, that were chasing krill over those high-rise buildings. Because I hadn't worked in a rainbow style for a while now, I decided to go with a rainbow color scheme. I also really like to work with colored pencils and watercolor. So in this one painting, I used that a lot more than usually. So lately I've been using a lot more just ink drawing and then watercolor painting on top, but in this one I really wanted to use more colored pencils. So for the krill, I drew them with colored pencils, and then I painted them, and then I went back over with colored pencils for the lines and went back in with watercolor again. So I did a few back and forth on each krill, the most detailed ones in the front, between watercolor and colored pencils to, you know, layer the colors until I had a nice, bright, vibrant color. So I really enjoyed the process. I really enjoyed the process. I love working with colored pencils and watercolor and layering both. I don't know what it is about that specific technique, but I just find it so enjoyable. So yeah, I worked on that. About krill, I've read a bit about krill as well. I'm currently still reading a book about ocean species. It's a French book. It's called something like The Geniuses of the Seas or something like that. And it's really interesting. It's more anecdotal in the sense that each chapter is about a specific species, and so this one was about krill, and I read that krill is actually represents the biggest biomass on Earth, which huge, right? As a single species. Because I know for a factor, I've read before that insects represent the biggest biomass, but that's all insects combined on Earth. So insects, it's the most. But krill specifically is the one species, so within a species, that represents the biggest biomass. So you have the most krill, if that makes sense. I hope it makes sense. If not, just ask and I'll try to explain it differently. But yeah, they represent the biggest biomass on Earth, but they're also really tiny, so they're part of plankton. Blue whales basically eat plankton, but specifically krill. I always found it very fascinating how the biggest mammal on Earth, which is the blue whale, is actually eating something so tiny. On that note, the biggest mammal can only live in the ocean just because of its mass. So you could not have something that big on Earth for different reasons. One is the weight. Something as big has some weight, and so you have to have a skeleton that is able to carry that weight. So the bigger the skeleton, the bigger the weight, and yeah, it's complicated. You cannot have something that is unreasonably huge on land. And the second reason is about the heat. So mammals, they produce their own heat, so we are warm-blooded, and the whale is the same. Okay, so I took my notes about all the biology terms because I was getting confused. So first off, which is why krill is so present in the cold waters, is that the colder the water, the more there is oxygen in it, and the more you have oxygen, the more life you have. Then the other thing is that polar waters have a lot of light during 6 months, and that's basically phytoplankton heaven. So, you know, like the sun is shining, the algae or the phytoplankton are just growing like crazy. So a lot of food for the krill that eats and eats and eats, creating that carbon sink. Cold waters are actually very, very rich in life. Now for the blue whales, they are warm-blooded, as I mentioned. The warm blood makes it so that warm blood is great and bad because it means that you have your own heat system to function. However, you need also to get rid of the heat if necessary. And with blue whales, because the mass is so huge, they don't have as much surface to cool down. They're always close to overheating, and so very cold water actually helps them to have a more acceptable temperature. Blue whales, basically the size makes it impossible to be on land, so they are in the sea, and the warm blood for that size just works better in cold water. So that I thought was quite interesting. I had no idea about that. Another interesting fact about krill is that they eat a lot of phytoplankton. So phytoplankton is basically tiny algae, the tiniest plants of the sea, and they contain a lot of CO2, and they're eaten by krill. And when krill poops, the dejection basically go down, so it sinks the carbon in the very deep sea. So krill is actually actively working on reducing carbon in the atmosphere as well. So yeah, it's super useful. It's great. Krill is amazing. It feeds a lot of animals. It's a carbon sink. It's being overfished right now. So if you want to see more or learn more about that, Sea Shepherd made a great video about it. Basically, it's overfished to create supplements for humans that we don't really need, that we could use differently, or we could find those specific sources elsewhere. And krill trawlers are just kind of destroying everything to get to the krill. So it's a bit of a big issue, to be honest. But yeah, that's kind of all I had to say about krill. There's a lot more to say, but I don't know that much more. I'm not a biologist, so I just read and then I take notes and I try to remember what I read. I just wanted to share that with you. Now, at the end here, you can see me reworking the sky. That's because, or the sky, the water. I thought I kind of messed it up with the watercolor, which happens. I just reworked it with some acrylic gouache to unify the sky/water. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for watching. If you watched until the end, leave an ocean emoji. That always helps greatly with the algorithm and it makes me really happy and it motivates me. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe, leave a thumbs up, and I really hope to see you in my next video. Bye!